Howdy folks, my name is Adam Lamontagne. I'm here today in a slightly more formal manner to talk about a political topic I take very seriously and that has been under a lot of fire these past few months. The topic is net neutrality. It's the principle that internet service providers, or ISPs for short, must treat all web traffic equally without blocking, throttling, or giving special treatment to certain content. Many consider it the equivalent to free speech law, but for the internet. Some people theorize that one day the web will be in complete control by corporations, where everything is hidden behind paywalls and your ISP will independently decide what you can and cannot see online. Net neutrality is a principle designed to prevent that. The term was originally coined in 2003, and since then, laws requiring ISPs to abide by those principles have been brought to various countries, including Canada, Japan, and many parts of Europe. In 2015, those laws were brought to America as well. However, those very rules have been in a lot of danger for a few months now. Our sitting president is an opponent to net neutrality, and he has appointed a fellow opponent to lead the agency that determines these laws. Firstly, though, I'd like to talk a little bit about the story of how America got net neutrality in the first place, because I find it quite interesting. In roughly 2014, there was a story going around that Comcast, one of the biggest ISPs in America, and also cited as one of the most hated companies in the country, was reportedly slowing down their customers' access to a particular site called Netflix, the streaming video service. Why would they do this? Well, Comcast as a company just happens to own NBC, which was probably seen as a direct competitor to Netflix. The theory is that Comcast was attempting to snuff out competition, not by providing a better service, but by abusing monopolistic business tactics. They also reportedly reached out to Netflix and proposed that they would continue to throttle their site unless they paid up, so to say. This, of course, is deeply troubling from a free market perspective and goes against the spirit of net neutrality. If unchecked, it opened the possibility of Comcast, or any ISP for that matter, to become a greedy gatekeeper that can pick and choose what you as a customer are allowed to do online. The story gained so much traffic that it prompted the Federal Communications Commissions, or the FCC for short, to consider if the nation should adopt official rules regarding the issue. The FCC took public comment on the issue, and it was here when the agency received a record-breaking 4 million comments, the majority in favor of net neutrality. As a result, the FCC passed the Open Internet Order in early 2015, officially writing net neutrality into law. This change wasn't unanimous, though. 2 out of the 3 FCC members at the time actually voted against the ruling, and to this day many Republicans criticize it. The biggest problem they tend to have is how the FCC went about passing this order. You see, in order to pass the Open Internet Order, the FCC had to reclassify Internet access as a Title II common carrier. In short, they deemed the Internet as a public utility. Now, what does this mean? Well, there are 2 major things it does. Firstly, it puts a lot more restrictions on internet service providers. What was once considered a service previously was now suddenly a household utility with strict regulations you'd sometimes see with water or electrical companies. The reclassification also made the FCC the single government agency that could impose and prosecute ISPs, taking power away from the Federal Trade Commissions, which typically dealt with ISP complaints. Regardless, many people praise the new ruling. I mean, the internet is used so much nowadays that you could certainly make an argument for it being a utility. Many of the companies it will affect also commonly top worst companies in America charts as well, so imposing regulations on them makes sense in order to prevent them from engaging in anti-consumer business practices. The internet did very well for those couple of years we had the Open Internet Order, but then President Trump became a thing. Despite he doesn't talk about net neutrality much, his few comments regarding the issue indicates that he is against the ruling. This worried many advocates for the Open Internet Order, because when a new president takes office, it's customary to assign new leaders to the various government agencies. His pick for the FCC was a man named Ajit Pai. He is a Republican from Kansas and was a former lawyer for Verizon. During the Obama administration, he was accepted to the FCC by unanimous Senate vote. This is actually why the Senate didn't have to vote for him again when Trump picked him. He already worked there. Trump merely promoted him, so to say. Pai is not a good sign for net neutrality advocates. He was one of the FCC members to vote against the Open Internet Order. In the short few months he's been chairman there, he has done some very worrying things for advocates. He passed a law exempting smaller ISPs from having to be transparent and approved of a business practice called zero rating, which many argue goes against net neutrality. In some of the interviews he was in, he stated many reasons why he was against the open internet order. To many advocates' surprise, he claims to actually be a supporter of a free and open internet, in spite of repeatedly calling the Title II classification a mistake. He states that Title II was originally created to control a national monopoly by the name of Mabel. Now, I've actually never heard of this story before, although I find it quite interesting. In a nutshell, a corporation called the Bell Telephone Company, later AT&T, had a nationwide monopoly on telephone service due to several years of patent prosecution, merging, and unchecked expansion. Eventually, America had enough of the company's monopolistic services and issued Title II upon the company in order to break it up and help it grow naturally. He claimed that ISP competition is not as bad at this. This is debatable, however, and I will explain why in a bit. Pai also claims that the more regulation you have, the less competition there is, which makes sense. Additionally, while he does admit that some ISPs have had a history of blocking certain websites, the specific examples are few and far between. Basically, he doesn't believe there are enough bad examples of anti-consumer practices in the ISP business to warrant regulating every single one. He proposes what is called a light touch approach, which basically means he'll let ISPs do what they want and then step in when things get out of hand, such as in the Mabel incident. Not specifically Pai, but I have also seen some Republicans that are actually in favor of many aspects of the open internet order, however are highly against the Title II solution Obama's FCC came up with. They state that if we want to preserve the open internet through regulation, we should pass a law through Congress that cements it, and not leave it up to a government agency that can turn its back on the rules with a flip of a switch, such as now. If, say, a bipartisan bill were to pass that emulated parts of the open internet order, it would be much more permanent. I've heard a few politicians from around the political spectrum agree on this, most notably Chuck Schumer, a Democratic senator from New York, and John Thune, a Republican senator from South Dakota. I would recommend writing to them about this if you're interested and would like to maybe see them go through something like this. Heck, even Comcast has an official statement saying something of the like. One final important note Pai mentions is that he believes competition between ISPs can preserve the open internet, and to a point, net neutrality as well. Many take issue with this, however, and that's because of regional monopolies. You see, over the years, internet service providers have appeared to have taken steps in order to limit the options of consumers. I once saw a statistic that stated that roughly 70% of all Americans have no more than 2 ISP options. This is likely orchestrated as well. Comcast CEO has before in interviews admitted that they and other ISPs specifically stay out of each other's territories in order to restrict competition. Cable companies have also gone astronomically far to preserve this as well. ISPs are among the heaviest spenders when it comes to government lobbying. For example, in Tennessee, they practically paid for a law restricting municipal-owned ISPs from expanding. They have also sued Google in the past for some pretty frivolous things when they were attempting to set up their own internet lines. However, Pai claims to have been involved in laws in the past that makes it easier for startup ISPs to get their foot in the door. However, many fear it won't be enough, and before we know it, gargantuan cable companies will have complete control over America's internet. So what can you do to help preserve net neutrality? Well, you can contact the FCC directly. There are also many organizations that are for the current net neutrality rulings that you can support. The American Civil Liberties Union is a big proponent for net neutrality. Organizations in favor of the current ruling include Fight for the Future, the EEF, Public Knowledge, Free Press, and Mozilla. There are several others, though generally most websites are also in favor. Also, make this issue known to your senators and House representatives. The more the merrier. I'm writing this video quite a ways in advance, but I will provide information in the description as to how to do all this. Do not sit this one out. If we lose net neutrality, it could negatively affect the internet forever.